everybody, welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about some recommendations for college students. My sister actually inspired this video because she was asking me for some recommendations that sort of fit what she was looking for, I guess, so like not too much crazy world building because she's having to read a lot of textbooks anyways, and so she doesn't want to feel like she's reading a textbook in her free time. A lot of really relatable and in-depth characters just because she wants something to kind of relate to, something to feel strongly about and enjoy. She also really likes urban fantasy and sort of like real world type of things, and so I have some recommendations for college students that fall into kind of maybe a new adult sort of category, or at least sort of fulfill these requirements, at least that my sister had. So hopefully this can help you out too. My first recommendation is going to be Moon Called by Patricia Briggs. This is the first book in the Mercedes Thompson series. It is about this coyote shapeshifter who lives in an area where there are a lot of werewolves, which can be kind of dangerous for her. And basically she gets involved in a lot of the werewolf stuff and some of the other supernatural community because it is an urban fantasy series, and she has to, rescue some people in this book. There is, I will admit, a love triangle initially in the series, so I know that that's kind of a turn on for some people. It does get resolved pretty quickly into the series, and it's really not that annoying in my opinion because it's pretty clear like who is a good choice and who is a bad choice. And so I don't think that's too irritating. The series is kind of long, so that is another downside if you're just looking for like a really quick like standalone read for your college experience. This one has like 13 books in the series or something like that, so it is kind of a commitment in terms of that, but they're all pretty short. You can see this is like, 300 pages. Not really sure. But yeah, story about a mechanic coyote shifter who is trying to stay out of werewolf business, ends up in the middle of it. She's got a hot werewolf neighbor. You know how it is. So yeah, this series definitely would recommend. I really enjoyed it when I read it. So yeah, it is still coming out, so it's not finished. That's another thing you should probably know. The next series that I would recommend for a college student would be Burn for Me by Alona Andrews. This is a trilogy, although there are a couple of other trilogies that follow different sisters. This one is about Nevada, and she is kind of a detective, right? She has this ability that I don't remember if it's a spoiler. It's been a long time since I've read these, so I'm trying to be like sort of vague so I don't spoil anything. She has to go after someone really dangerous with the magic powers in their world, and then she ends up involved with this even more dangerous man who, sort of romance series, but it's also, urban fantasy detective sort of stuff, and she kind of gets in over her head, or at least she thinks so at the beginning, so she ends up having to work together with this man to catch this more dangerous person. It's definitely really fun. The characters are pretty good. World building's not crazy, no standard urban fantasy. The magic system is a little bit unique for urban fantasy, so that's kind of fun. But yeah, this one's definitely a fun read. Got a strong romantic subplot, so if you're into that, that's definitely going to be a read for you. This one, like I said, trilogy, but there are some other like companion trilogies about the other sisters that I haven't read yet. I've only read the first trilogy. The next series that I would recommend is another urban fantasy series. So this is going to be the encrypted novel. So the first one is called Discount Armageddon by Shauna McGuire. So this series is based about this girl whose family kind of like keeps monsters in check, I guess, in an urban fantasy setting. But she's off on her own for the first time in her life. She's not with her family, and she's trying to like keep this one city, I think New York. I really don't know. New York, I think, kind of under control with all the monsters running around and make sure that nobody's getting hurt, but also that she's not totally exterminating the monsters like the Covenant, which is sort of the like opposing society that her family left several generations ago. Yeah, but she definitely wants to like be a professional ballroom dancer, so that's sort of like what she wants, and she's still trying to deal with these things, like there are lizard people in the sewers that she's trying to deal with, and just everything gets crazy, and then this guy from the Covenant shows up, and she's got to deal with that too. So it's definitely a really fun urban fantasy. It is more like poking fun at the urban fantasy genre than usual, So there's a lot of just goofiness. Like this outfit is part of the goofiness. Like she actually wears that in the book, and there's just sort of some poking fun at urban fantasy tropes. But yeah, it's a really fun read. I've only read the first two, but there is a further, like a bigger series, but they definitely read fine on their own. The next book that I would recommend for college students would be Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. So this is his one standalone okay, not his one, but his best standalone that I've heard. I haven't read any of his other standalones, so I can't really recommend them, but this book, it does have some of the world building that I mentioned trying to avoid, but it is not as in-depth, I feel like, as some of his other books. Like, it's definitely interesting, but it's not complicated to understand. And there's sort of a romance in it as well, which makes it a little bit more fun for the vibe that I'm going for these college recommendations. It's funny. There are some really relatable characters in this one as well, and the plot is really quite fun, and so is the magic system. So this one I think is definitely like a fun, quick read and introduction to Sanderson if you're interested in like looking into more books. But it's definitely not going to like feel like a lot of work to read this like some of his other books might for a college student. So yeah, I guess I should tell you what it's about. So there's this princess, her name is Ciri, and she's in this kingdom where like they don't really use the magic system because like religious reasons, I guess. But her older sister is supposed to be married to the god king from this other kingdom, who is supposedly like very dangerous and all of that stuff. I won't get too into the details. Anyways, she ends up being sent in her sister's place, and so the story is about her and a variety of other people and the new city and kind of the god king and the politics going on there. There's another character that we follow who is actually one of these gods, and he kind of like doubts his own divinity, and he's a very funny character to follow. So it's definitely a really great story, and yeah, there's a talking sword, so if that sells you on a talking sword. My next recommendation for college students would be Fireborn by Rosario Munda. This is young adult, which my sister had mentioned, she's not as into young adult, but she's willing to read it for sure. She just doesn't want characters that feel like really immature, like they can sometimes feel in young adult, because that can be a little bit annoying. So this book, the characters are like 16, but they're really not annoying, because they have like responsibilities and they don't spend the whole time like whining and stuff. So yeah, this is basically Russian Revolution, both dragons, kind of the aftermath of the Russian Revolution, I suppose. It follows two characters who kind of have different backgrounds. One of them came from like poorer background, and one of them came from sort of the aristocracy, and they are both dragon riders in the new regime that's trying to be established after the revolution kind of made the previous kingdom fall. And they're kind of dealing with like the fallout of all of that, and like what does it mean to rule the people, like how can you do that without being as tyrannical as the people before you, because like even if your motivations are different, like does it really matter to the people if you end up doing exactly the same things? So yeah, it's really good. The characters are really well written, and it's not crazy world building. I mean, it's basically like Russia but with dragons. So and it's also pretty quick. It is a trilogy, which I have not read all of, so but definitely I would recommend this one. My next recommendation would be Six Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim. This is a fairy tale retelling of that fairy tale where like the brothers get turned into swans, and their sister has to like knit them sweaters out of stinging nettles, and she can't talk and everything. I'm sure you've seen this fairy tale, but this is a different twist on it. So it is actually in an Asian setting, and there are cranes instead of swans. So yeah, and there's also a bit more of a plot than usual, because normally she kind of just like sits around and knits stuff, but this one there's actually kind of a plot. There are dragons. The love interest is actually like pretty cute in this one, whereas I know sometimes with this fairy tale like it can be kind of hit or miss, right? This one, really good. So an adorable little fairy tale read. I would recommend this for you. My next recommendation is sort of like a new adult book. I know that it's not exactly categorized as that everywhere, but that's what I would call it. So this is Crescent City by Sarah J. Maas. It is quite a big book, so like that I know can be kind of overwhelming, especially if you're in college, but my sister's actually reading this right now and she's really enjoying it. It really flies, I'm telling you. Like, it's really fast despite how large it is. But this is basically this setting where it's almost like a futuristic-y sort of modern setting with all of these different creatures, the fae, vampires, werewolves, pretty standard, right? But it's about this girl who is half fae and half human, and she's kind of a party girl, but then something happens and it's like this big tragedy. I won't say what because it is pretty shocking, I would say, at the beginning of the book, and she ends up having to investigate it with this fallen angel, who has to like watch her, and so they end up having to work together to solve this mystery. But I would say that the world building in this, while it isn't like overwhelming and info dumpy, it's definitely like pretty cool, and the way that everything comes together at the climax of this book is just like it's great. Like little tiny things that you were like, oh, I didn't realize that was going to be important later. It's just a tiny detail, and that like everything is important. And like I could not stop reading when I got to the end of this book. It was so good. And the characters are also like really relatable, really well fleshed out. So I would highly recommend this for you if you're looking for even just a standalone, because I know there is more in the series, but I really think this one stands alone pretty well. Just a fun read that's a little bit more like a big fantasy book, you know, instead of just like a quick little urban fantasy read. So yeah. My next recommendation would be Jade City. This one is an adult book, so that is, you know, cool, but it's only a trilogy and it's not crazy long. It is definitely like very intense. There are a lot of very intense characters. The world building doesn't feel crazy or anything like that. And it's really great. A lot of people pitch it as sort of, you know, The Godfather meets sort of like a kung fu movie, which I would say is pretty accurate, right? So this is basically about this crime family that runs this island, but there's like another crime family who runs like the other half, and they use jade to kind of have a magic system. It's, you know, you'll read about it if you read this. But basically it follows the three siblings of this family as they try to kind of run their crime syndicate, I guess, but you're rooting for them because they've got all these different relationships. You know, like there's one who tried to get out of the family, but she's kind of back, and there's one who's like the enforcer, and there's one who's like trying to run this, but it's like a lot on his shoulders, and it's really cool. There's kind of like a war starting between them and the other crime family on the island. Yeah, I definitely would recommend this. It's fast paced, it's pretty intense, really great characters, so yeah. My last recommendation for college students would be the Murderbot Diaries. You can see I actually have the first one back again. My brother was borrowing it. He's also in college, so, you know, these recommendations definitely work. These are a great option if you're looking for something pretty short, with also like pretty well fleshed out and relatable characters. Well, one character, Murderbot. The others are less fleshed out, but that's not important because it's about Murderbot. But yeah, these are really short, so if you're looking for something just like quick, you don't want to be overwhelmed, you don't want to carry something around that's really big, and you're just trying to like get back into reading a little bit while you're in college, I would definitely recommend these. They're about this sort of like socially anxious robot who kind of just wants to watch TV and not do anything, but Murderbot has to you know, protect people and like work on these scientific projects basically as like a security robot. And it's really funny because Murderbot's commentary throughout, like internal monologue, is just so funny. And these are just really light, breezy, quick reads, sci-fi setting, just about this Murderbot that doesn't really want to do its job or talk to people. And I feel like that's pretty relatable. So, yeah. But that has been everything that I would recommend for you to read while you're in college. I tried to pick books that were, you know, pretty approachable, not too crazy world building, with some really relatable characters, because I know that's really important, especially for college students, just like having characters to latch onto. I know it's been really important for me, and my sister was really stating that she wanted that. I tried to pick books that didn't have too much like annoyingness in them, because I know you don't have time for that. You want something really good, really punchy, really fast-paced, and you just want to like pick it up, really enjoy yourself, and then go back to, you know, doing homework or sleeping or whatever. So I hope that these helped you out. Thank you so much for watching this video, everybody. Bye. Also, I apologize if the sound quality got bad towards the end. I don't know when it cut off, but my iPad decided to just stop recording my audio here, and the audio on my camera super is terrible. So I'm sorry, guys.